perspectives into key challenges and the role of brands in supporting and enabling sustainable manufacturing. Clearly, the apparel sector, or the manufacturing side of the apparel sector, has had a difficult time, to say the least, and many businesses in South Asia have had significant challenges. So that's what we're going to be talking about this session. As I said earlier, please do make your comments in the chat box or put your hand up, and I will bring you in as we go. I'm hoping that we'll have a really open and frank conversation about the challenges and some ways in which they can be certainly alleviated. All right, joining me, we have Mustafiz Uddin, who's the owner and managing director from Denim Export Limited, Bangladesh, and Anant Ahuja, head of organizational development with Shahi Exports in Delhi. So perhaps I can turn to you first, Anant. Perhaps just give us some initial reflections on what the main challenges are facing your business right now are, Anant.
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much. Just a quick intro on myself and on Shahi. I work in a team called the Organizational Development Team at Shahi Exports. And basically what my focus is on change management and sustainability projects. That covers environmental sustainability as well as worker well-being. So we handle these projects centrally for all of Shahi's factories. And Shahi is a business that was started by my grandmother in the 70s. It's now grown to become the largest garment manufacturer and exporter here in India. So just to give a sense of the scale, there's over 50 factories spread across 7 different states, and there's 100,000 workers employed across these factories. So when it comes to worker well-being and sustainability, obviously, these are areas where there's a potential to make a huge impact through kind of our central, initiatives. And just on today's topic, to start off, I guess I could say that the past year has definitely been a challenging one for the entire industry. I think just a year ago, we were all here at this conference talking about kind of, things as they were unraveling with order cancellations and lockdowns and all of the sort of panic. And strangely enough, it's a year since then, and the world has moved on in a lot of different ways. But unfortunately, here in India, there's kind of this really aggressive second wave that's definitely giving flashbacks of, what all happened last year. But in some ways, it's kind of worse, at least, on the ground, because the whole medical system's been completely overwhelmed. So that's kind of the context, I guess, against which I could share some perspective. But just, I'm sure we'll get into all this through the course of the conversation today. But really, I think what the past year has shown is it's definitely been a test for, the resilience of all the different stakeholders in the industry. And it's been a really strong test to see how the partnership between suppliers and brands and retailers can really, can work, and how it can't work, how it's not working. So it's definitely given a lot of perspective on that, which I'm happy to talk more about. And I think, even for a company as large as Shahi, there's been a lot of issues in kind of working through, even simple things in terms of, how business is done and the partners, the brands and retailers that we work with, for securing kind of the, I guess you could say, livelihood of such a large workforce.
Okay, thank you very much indeed, Anant. Mustafiz, turning to you, what are for you the challenges that you're facing right now? Give us a quick couple of sentence context setting intro as well, Mustafiz.
Hi, thanks to everyone. Happy to see quite familiar faces and names. It gives a lot of strength. Very happy for that, and it would be nice if we would meet in personally, as the way in last Innovation Sustainable Summit we've been in Amsterdam, and I was lucky to join previous 3 years. So I really missed the opportunity. And thanks for inviting me. Regarding the contest, actually, my friend Anand already explained the situations, what's going on in our manufacturing world. But I will add few more things. Anand will talk about a lot afterwards, and let me tell some things. I think I have few questions to all of you. Is these problems are new? I don't think so. These are the new problems. At least I can tell to you my experiences. I This is about last 20 years I am in this industry, and I can say to you what I had seen 20 years before. Today also I am seeing the same things. So the problems we are encountering today is becoming more and highlighted due to the COVID, but the problems was always there. Problems about the purchasing practices, problems about the human rights, workers, and payments, all these things. Those problems in our industry from long before. And if you all look into last 10 years, all the conferences, what we spoke, and the fact, you will see that we've been talking on the same topics only. So I think it's time to react rather than having this conversation, because we are at the end. We manufacturers came to a position we cannot afford this anymore. We are really going to die. We are at the end at the moment. We enough is enough for us. This is the situation we are standing at this moment.
Thanks, Mr. Fizz. You're obviously very clear and very direct, and I thank you for that. So let me put it straight back to you then. So what do you want from brands and your customers? What is it that they can do to help you right now?
No, I don't need help. I'm not looking for help. It's business. We are not doing charity. We are doing business. All we want, the fair deal, the justice, which is not happening. You made a contact with someone. Tell me, if you as an individual, as a consumer, you go to a coffee shop, a Starbucks, you ask for a coffee, and the guy made the coffee for you, and you say, I don't want the coffee. Can you do this in Europe? You cannot do that. So this is same happening with us. We invested our money, we bought the raw material, we purchased everything, we produced the goods, and then the clients had not accepted the goods. In my factory, still millions of dollars of goods are there. I'm not a very big factory owner as my friend, but I'm happy for him. I am very small individual entrepreneur. I build by my blood and sweat in every single day. And look into what happening with me. So this is not only with me, this is also the entire Bangladesh, also entire Pakistan, India, all the manufacturing countries, the same thing. So come to your questions. We are not looking for help. We want justice and fair. We want the contract to be respected, on-time payment. We want contract to be respected. All these things we want. We are not looking for any extra things. So actually, when I listened this word, that help, it made me very sad. I'm not looking for help. My workers are not looking for help. My workers wants to only get paid on time, which is not possible for us to do at the moment, because when you don't pay to a factory on time, when you delay the payment, I have some customer who had not paid the money still now 1 year. Arcadia, all these things, still the same thing. So how do we pay to the worker? Who will give us the money to pay to the worker? And when I read all the newspapers, TV, magazine, the Western world is so much care about the workers and human rights. Doing this kind of activity have a direct impact on human rights and to the workers.
Fine. Can you give us an idea of the scale of this problem for you? I mean, how many garments have you
Okay.
Over the course of the year, how many garments did you make that were then taken?
Okay, I have around 2,000 women working for me. I have a very small factory. I produce around 5 million pieces of jeans in a year. My yearly turnover is like 20 million US dollar, and I have at the moment stock is around 10 million US dollar. So what does this mean? My 50% capital is blocked. I cannot do new businesses. I cannot purchase the new raw material. And then whatever the money I had invested to bought all this raw material, they are not also accepting that. So I am in a deadlock situation. And then I need to pay to my workers every single month, because workers are very poor. Even the salary is not enough for them to survive. So you cannot dream to give the workers half salary or less salary like this. So this is the situation.
Thank you, Mr. Viz. That's very clear. Thank you very much indeed. Anant, let me turn back to you. Reflect on what you've heard from Mustafiz, and is the challenge the same for you? And are you finding that you're not being paid on time? And do you simply want a fair deal from brands and your customers?
Yeah, I think Mustafiz has said it, really clearly and in a way that's, pretty easy to understand. I think that, in general, we're the way the industry operates, where essentially, manufacturers are investing all the money to make the goods and then getting paid many months later. That system has definitely, it's worked so far. It's had its issues, of course, but when an issue like COVID happens and when you have order cancellations, that's when it's totally not worked, because you end up in these situations where you're sitting on inventory and you don't know what to do with it. And it's bad in so many ways. The first way, of course, is the fact that, workers aren't getting paid for all the hours of work they did. And, they're surviving on, these wages. So that's not really an option. Unfortunately, the people in control of the countries that we live in, they're not able to offer the kinds of support systems that other countries have. So, like the full responsibility of paying wages lies with the employer. There's not furlough schemes. There's not social support systems. And to put that into perspective, 30% of our costs is wages, which is pretty high for any industry. It's a constant cost that you have to prepare for and be ready for. And it's a labor-intensive business, so obviously that's the reason why this proportion is so high. But so, when you've made all these goods, shipped them out, or, are getting ready to ship them out, made whatever investments, and customers are canceling orders, it's not really a feasible way to work. From the livelihood perspective, how can the business survive? How can we continue to give employment? How can we pay wages so that, workers can actually earn, a decent amount? But then also, what do you do with all this material, right? There's no point in creating kind of, new circular models if you're also creating huge inventories of goods that don't get used, and then, don't even, you don't even necessarily always have the option to kind of reuse these materials. So brands obviously like to protect their kind of designs and ideas. So there's restrictions on what you can do with this stuff, which can be, a huge challenge in itself. So I think, no matter the size of your operations, I think this is a problem. And I think what it's revealed for a company like Shahi is that we feel, obviously concerned about these issues. We feel a sense of, we're grateful that we've been able to make it this far. When the lockdown happened in India in April and, everything was shut for a month, we had to make the decision of how to pay wages out. But then we didn't know how long it would go on for. And we knew that we didn't have, enough we didn't have the ability to continue to pay out wages without any work beyond that 1 month. So without the, ability to know what was going to happen next, it was scary. And it was definitely, a wake-up call in terms of our growth strategy. One of the main reasons, we kind of continue to grow and add more factories. Obviously, we see opportunity, but more than anything, I think what drives the company is the fact that when we open up a factory and employ workers, we're creating jobs for a section of society that is, here in India, locked out of the labor force. So it's a really kind of compelling vision. But then when you see like the risks of having this growth strategy, where if you are put in a situation of a lockdown, brands cancel orders, governments don't support through furlough schemes, and you're forced to kind of figure out how to protect the livelihood of so many workers, it definitely can, limit your kind of ability to grow in the same way. So these are just some early reflections that I think companies like ours are definitely reflecting on and trying to understand what it means for the business.
Sure. Okay, well, I'm sure everyone else must have some points and questions they want to make here, but I know everyone's being quite quiet at the moment. So we'll keep going. Can you give us a little bit about, what's the sort of scale of the problem that you've been facing in terms of your, the inventory that you've got that people haven't, and your customers have not been taking delivery of? I mean, how many, what sort of size or number of garments or scale are we talking about?
Well, I think from our side, it took a lot of effort, a lot of dialogue to reach a level where we were able to ship out most of our goods. I think our customer base, fortunately, wasn't one that needed to cancel orders to a large extent. There were one or two customers that put us in a difficult situation, and then you see in the news that their shareholders are getting paid out, and it's confusing information that you get to hear. So, but the thing is that even if you have these one or two large orders that get canceled, we're talking millions of pieces, that can completely wipe out a year's worth or a quarter's worth of profit, which ultimately means that it stops your ability to continue growing. Maybe you can survive, but you're just barely surviving, even at our scale. So I don't have the exact numbers, and this keeps changing. But essentially, what we had to do in terms of the conversations was request a lot of our customers to not cancel orders. So it wasn't like Mustafa says, we're not asking for help. We're just saying, hey, honor your agreements. And in a lot of cases, the way we were able to actually ship these orders out ultimately was when our customers kind of gained some confidence in the market. And a lot of the orders were sent out at discounted rates to avoid them from kind of just stockpiling, with some order cancellations as well from a few customers. Some customers went bankrupt as well. So that was just a reminder to us that the same way brands and retailers would sort of have supplier scorecards, check the factory, compliance, check the financial health of their suppliers, we should do the same for our customers. If we feel that, there's a possibility that a brand may, face a challenge like this, perhaps, we should put some terms and conditions on the types of orders we take from them. Although doing that is not easy, these are the types of solutions that, we have to resort to at times.
Thank you. As a reminder, please do put your questions in the chat box, or use the raise hand function for your points, and I will put them to Mr. Fiz and to Anand. I mean, I would have hoped that the comments we've had, honest, direct comments from our two panelists, would at least have provoked some thoughts in our audience. So please do be thinking about the points you'd like to make in support of our panelists, or to discuss the challenges that have been over the past year. I mean, it seems to me that the challenges that Anand and Mr. Fiz have talked about, these are the sort of things that are going to prevent factories being able to work with their customers to push on the other impacts, the kind of environmental issues, the social issues that we've been talking about, and that are challenges for the sector. I mean, their ability to do these is very much curtailed when when they are rather having to deal immediately with the fact they're not getting paid for orders made. Mr. Fiz, perhaps you could reflect on that. I mean, do you find that this is the immediate concern now, and you can't deal with perhaps other issues you would like to be dealing with because this, if you like, trumps everything right now?
Yeah, actually, I would like to tell a few words about, you said about the partnership, that to build a partnership. How do you build partnership with your customer when your customer is not trustable? So I think in any relationship, trust is most important thing. Transparency was not there, though we are keep on hearing about the transparency. When we see the social media and the news, we feel the entire fashion industry is full of transparency. We are looking for fiber transparency, traceability. We talk a lot about all these things, but what is the reality happened with the manufacturers? Do the clients was transparent with us? No, it's not, because first they can there was not enough information from them. They could have tell that, okay, this is happened with us, our shops are closed, can we do like that? There was no transparent communication from them. This was the biggest mistakes, or this was the biggest problem for us, because as my friend Anand already said, when they paid for 1 month, they don't know how many months they have to be paid like this. So we don't see any transparency at all. But I think rather than that, the demand of transparency is increasing. Sustainability also the same thing. We talk about a lot about sustainability in terms of water, in terms of climate action change, because the Western world love to hear all this buzzword, and then it helps many brands and retailers to sell more to the consumer. But you cannot avoid your workers or factories and then you talk about sustainability. Sustainability doesn't mean that you don't pay your workers or you don't pay your suppliers. Sustainability, not only the environment, green and waterless, all these kinds of things. Sustainability means also to take all of us together. So I think it's not happening. And if you look into like that, the only solution I think at this moment is put a legislations from the European Union and or the government. This is the only way to move forward, because those problems are not old new problems. Those are the old problems. Years after years, we are facing these same problems. So it's time to bring now law and protect us by the law. That's the only solution, I think.
So you'd like to see laws implemented in the European Union and elsewhere that would just insist and make sure that the contractual terms are met by buyers. I mean, I guess, and back to my earlier point, just so will this past year then impact significantly the way that you will do your business going forward? You say you need to have trust. I mean, you simply, it seems that so many people, you've lost your trust in the brands that you were supplying.
Yes, of course, because see, the apparel business totally runs on trust and relationship. Those are the most important things. How this business work. Example, a client in Germany, they will say that we need to purchase from a manufacturer next 3 months 50 million euros goods. So the client don't give us the advance. Many people think that the consumer go to the shop, they purchase and give the money. For our business, it doesn't work. So we start to purchase everything's raw materials through our own finance. And as my friend already said, we invest this money from our own sources and we made these goods. And on top of that, we also invest the worker wages, factory cost, utility cost, all these kind of things. So once we invest all this money and then we borrow the money from the financial institute to prepare the goods, and then what happened at the end, they say, I don't want to take the goods. So this is something have to protect by the law, because this is very heavy for a factory. A factory can earn 50 million euro, maybe his 10 years income. Maybe the factory will be going to bankrupt. Many factories went bankrupt in Bangladesh. 120 factory already closed during this pandemic. Why they closed? Why? How many workers lost the job? Why? Because of this kind of unethical behavior from the few brands and retailers. So these have to be stopped. These have to be stopped, because I am always hearing in the TV and newspaper that the Western world so much care about the workers. So if they really so much care about these workers, these factories have to be protected. Otherwise, it will be never-ending discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Viz. Anand, could you reflect on my point around future relationships? And obviously, Mr. Viz feels very strongly and is very passionate about the difficulties and the unfairness, as he sees it, that is being imposed on the sector, and it will impact future relationships. What's your view? Is it similar? Will you the lack of trust now that you've found, is that going to impact the way that you will deal with your customers in the future?
I mean, yes, I think it is an issue. I think that, hopefully what I'm seeing happening, and hopefully what becomes a bigger trend, is that brands and retailers do kind of build more strategic partnerships. They do look at sort of the long-term relationships they have with their vendor base, and proactively solve these problems together, as opposed to kind of, building relationships, building trust with a particular vendor, and then, as we've all heard, moving to a different vendor based on, a cheaper price or anything like that. So I think that, if this trend continues, we'll definitely be in a much better place where there can be more communication, more understanding of the issues on the ground. Something that Mustafiz and I were talking about is like, when you talk about the sort of social issues that happen in factories related to workers, in order to solve these problems, you really do need to be on the ground. You need to know what's happening. It's quite unsimilar to the environmental issues, because, if you develop a technology in Sweden or in Amsterdam and then install it in India, usually you're not going to have much issues doing that. But when it comes to social programs, the context is very important. So I think that if the trend this way can continue, where you have more strategic partnerships, more long-term commitment, less sort of pricing pressures, just the right perspective to kind of understand that, look, our goals is not just to source the cheapest goods, but it's actually to move away from this transactional nature of buyer-supplier relationships, to collaborate, to work on things like circularity, to more deeply engage. And even if that, with that will come a lot of value and positive things, not always in the cheapest price for that particular order, but in the ability to sort of overcome the long-term issues. If that's the perspective of brands and retailers and people on their teams, I think like we can definitely, work together to achieve a lot of the goals that the industry has to achieve. I think you're muted.
Excuse me. Thank you. Thanks very much for the questions that are coming in now. I really do appreciate them. Haven from Antioch University, she asked a question that I think that Mustafa has dealt with, but I wanted to put it to Anant, just around regulation. Do you, like Mustafa's and Anant, would you like to see stiffer regulations in buyer countries, which will require upfront payments or payments on a more timely basis? Do you think that is regulation the way forward to deal with this?
I think so. I think, regulations in the countries where we're shipping goods would help, because as I reflect, even comparing kind of India and Bangladesh, you see the way that the garment industry has flourished in Bangladesh, and has really uplifted a lot of the country in positive ways. That same potential could exist within India, but it's very limited. There should be 10 Shahis in India, but there's not. And I think that part of the reason it's like that is because my understanding is that Bangladesh has been more open to kind of these types of interventions, including coalitions, the UN, ILO, just getting help where needed. So when you have that mindset, when the government has that mindset, I think it can mean a lot. Whereas here in India, unfortunately, the government's been very closed off. So when you have organizations like ILO trying to mobilize people, and even last year with COVID relief, I remember the ILO was trying to provide some relief for garment workers. And ultimately, the efforts didn't really get too far because they faced a lot of barriers with the local government. So that I don't think that the government intends to be, against the industry, and there have been some favorable industry policies. But when it comes to dealing with the sort of brands and retailers, and, international sort of institutions, I think sometimes the government can not get the right, strategy in place. So if our orders were protected by laws, in the US and in Europe, I think that would be a really good starting point for sure.
Okay, thank you. Thanks very much indeed. Anna Aslan makes a question, which I think, again, Mustafa, as you touched on this, you said that these problems are not new. You've had problems in the past about with payments from customers. Could you reflect a little bit on just perhaps what was it like before the pandemic? How much, and contrast that with the situation that's happened in the past year, so that obviously you don't want to go back to a situation where you've still, a pre-pandemic situation wasn't acceptable to you, you said. So perhaps you just characterize that, explain to us what it was like before the pandemic.
Yeah, First of all, as I said in the beginning, the situation was like this in the apparel industry earlier, and today also the same thing. The only difference made the pandemic, it's highlighted the problem, and many people came to know the problems, and many of the people seeing this in the newspaper, in the TV. So for them it is very new. The problem is highlighted, but the problems are not new. Okay, I'm giving you one of the example. You probably had seen, I had written an article about the bankruptcy law change that need to be changed. I was advocating at the moment two things. One is the legislation in purchasing practices, and one about the bankruptcy law. Sharing with you one of the experiences, what happened with me. Like I had supplied the goods in British retailers, Arcadia, Topshop, Topman, all these people, and then also the Peacocks. And you know that they put chapter 11, and Peacocks, when I send them an email after their CEO Steve, who bought the company, that where is my unpaid money, he said that you will not get any money. I already came to know, and there was no reply from them. Why? Because according to the British law, you can do that. You can really not pay to your previous liabilities. And then what happened, this Philip Day bought the same company through his CEO, Steve. So let's look into a case 5 years before. 4 or 5 years before, this is the same happened with me also. One of the client, you know, that is from Netherlands, called Mr. Roland Ken. Then he having Cool Cat. You may be aware of this. Then Cool Cat also did the chapter 11, and then all the goods are prepared in Bangladesh to many factories. Then what happened? Someone had go to administration, then bought it, and then again all the suppliers' money is gone. So is this fair? Once you declare administration chapter 11, and then you don't pay all the money of the manufacturer, then your relatives or your wife or your CEO is buying the company, and then go to the manufacturer and asking, can I have the goods in 50% discount, 60% discounts? What is happening now with Peacock, last 7 days issue? So is this problem old problem? I am very young in this industry. There are a lot of learned people. You ask them, they will also tell the same thing. At least in my experiences, I can share with you these 4 problems. This was happened earlier also. This is happening now also. Let's talk about the payment delays. Payment delays was not new. I attended a conference in International Apparel Federation, Amsterdam, 3-4 years before, and you know what happened in that conferences? I'm from Asia, and we have some fellow friends from Pakistan and all other manufacturers from Turkey and Romania, all these places. And this is the first time in my life I realize all the problem I am encountering is not only in Asia we are encountering, they are also encountering the same problem. Then my Turkish friends, Turkish factory owners used to tell that in Europe, you cannot pay the bills after 60 days or 70 days, something like that, but still the buyers are paying after 90 days. And in terms of our countries, in Asian countries, we get paid after 90 days, 120 days, someone come 160 days, as much delay as possible. So giving to the answer of your question, Jan, those problems was not a new problem. We are reacting. Some people are showing that these are the very new problem. Then we will take another 10 years to solve the problem, like climate action change, 2030, 2040, 2050. As I said in the beginning of my discussions, we are not in that position anymore, 2030, 2040. The problems already identified. Now it have to be solved. Otherwise, it is a matter of survival for the workers and the manufacturers in all over the country, all over the world. It is not the problem of a small factory or big factory. It doesn't matter. It is not the problem of geographical Bangladesh or Pakistan or Turkey. It is the problem of the global manufacturer, and it have to be changed.
Thanks, Mr. Fizz. Thank you very much indeed again. Okay, I want to move on slightly and talk about how we can get beyond the situation, how we can get resolve these issues. Some of our questioners are asking or making some suggestions as to what might happen. And Catherine Sharp suggests, asks what is the role of industry organisations and coalitions to improve the situation, so that the ongoing shocks to the market don't cause the problems that we've highlighted. And what's your view? What do you want to see from industry coalitions to help to kind of get beyond the challenges that both you and Mr. Fizz have raised?
It's a good question. I mean, the thing is, maybe Mustafiz has a better view on this, because I think in Bangladesh, the industry is definitely more united. Here, unfortunately, I think part of the reason why, I see some questions around this, but part of the reason why the government hasn't necessarily provided the right support, again, I don't necessarily want to assume it's negative intentions, but I think it's just lack of understanding of this industry. It's not as big here as Bangladesh. There's not as much cohesion. So even when it comes to kind of, sharing the perspectives and problems, there's a small coalition of industry, folks who make these kinds of, cases to the government or work together on issues, but the voice is not loud enough when it comes to kind of responding to the issues of, brands and retailers and their sourcing sort of strategies or practices. So I'm curious to hear what Mustafa has to say. Maybe there's more to learn from that.
Yeah,
sure, Mr. Fizz.
Yeah, I thanks, Anand. I will say that it's not that associations or the countries or government we can do. It has to be solved in Europe and USA, all these Western countries who are purchasing the goods. The legislations have to come from there. Because giving you one example, like the peacocks, what happening? They had not paid the money of many manufacturers in Bangladesh. They are really suffering when I'm talking with them. Sometimes they call me because they know I'm little bit connected with all of you. They said, Mustafiz bhai, is anything possible? I really cannot sleep at home because the banks are pushing me. So this kind of pressure they are having because they borrowed the money from the bank and produced the goods for these peacocks. So the thing is, we cannot do anything to him, even we know all these things. Why? Because they register in the British law. They are not registered in Bangladesh law. Bangladesh government cannot do anything to them because it is not at the land of our law. So these have to be protected in the Western countries where they are purchasing the goods. Very simple. And as you said, Ian, that we need upfront payment, we need advance payment. I know many of you must be asking for that, but believe me, we don't want any favor. We don't want any extra benefit from them. We just want the normal way of trading. They had placed a order, it's a legal contract, and we want them to respect this. No need to be help us by giving us some extra money or advance money or all like this. Our demand is just to honor the contract and a fair business.
Yeah, and
what's the rule? Sorry,
I just want to add one thing really quickly. I see a question about this as well. When it comes to furlough schemes, I definitely wanted to clarify. Unfortunately, over here where, there's so much poverty, the government doesn't have the ability to provide financial assistance for furlough schemes. We can't just say, hey, our factories aren't running for a month, so we're not going to pay our workers because the government will provide, assistance. That the government puts that responsibility back on employers. And if you don't have any capital, which a lot of companies don't have that much capital at hand to be able to pay a full month of salary in advance, ultimately it affects the lives of workers and it stops these businesses from existing.
Sure. I mean, I think certainly the furlough schemes have been in existence in the UK, for example, and a lot of retailers and brands have benefited from them for sure. I wanted to ask obviously there's Mustafa, you made the point that there needs to be legislation not where you are but where the buyers are. What's the role of the Bangladeshi and Indian governments then to kind of really push at international level for this to happen? Lobby the UK government, the EU, to really move in this. Do you think
Yes, thanks. From our governments, from all our governments, actually we can lobby these things or we can request or we can pursue these things, but we cannot enforce these things because this is everything have to decide in those countries. But there are a lot of organizations working for that. You maybe know that International Apparel Federations and a lot of NGOs like Lauder Foundations, TEDcraft. So there are several organizations lobbying about these issues in Western world and European Union and British Parliament. Also last week I attend a conference. Also the same thing, European Commission was there. So there was a lot of lobbying going on in the Western world, but from our end, it have very less to do.
Okay. And answer the comment?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think the government, you can't downplay their role. Even with what Mustafa is saying, the requirement to kind of reform things, in the U.S. and in Europe, I think unfortunately we haven't seen the government here be proactive enough. I don't want to get too political, but essentially, for us, there hasn't been enough support for this industry, despite the fact that when we, at least, industry folks look at this, what we're able to do in terms of the job creation, in terms of, creating formal employment and all the other things, it's been kind of disappointing, the example that they've set so far. So it doesn't give us too much hope. We just kind of hope for the minimum, that they don't enforce strict lockdowns and don't, for example, recently in the state of Karnataka in South, where we have most of our factories, the second wave has been pretty bad. So they've just announced a 14-day lockdown, and it's, they closed the whole state down. All industries are allowed to operate except the garment industry. And everyone's really confused why they would discriminate. They say it's because it's a labor-intensive sector. But what we've seen is we've been tracking the COVID cases and spread. And first of all, most of the workers are young. They're young women, so their risk of COVID having any effect on their health is very low. And secondly, we've seen very low case numbers. Probably a lot of them are asymptomatic, but there has been testing through the local state insurance hospitals and stuff. But I'm just sharing this to illustrate the point that sometimes they can just not recognize the needs of the industry, and so it's hard to kind of expect them to understand what's going on fully, at least here.
Sure. Okay. Conscious we're coming towards the end of time. I'd like to just ask a kind of final question that reflects a little bit what Egbert from Smith & Zoon asks. And it's this: let's reset. Let's say, okay, let's reset relationships. Let's start again. What does that then look like from your perspective? And how would you want to move forward? I mean, I totally appreciate that Musab in particular strongly feels that the situation is significantly not one that you're happy with, for sure. It's quite become very apparent. But if we reset, what does it look like going forward? What do you want to see as the steps back to establishing the trust that you talked about, Mustafa?
See, the thing is, our brands and retailer talk a lot about collective bargaining. They always say that you need to talk to your workers. You need to always have a chat with them. You need to understand their problems. And then also they support the unions also. So unions are for what? Which we also support. Then it gives an opportunity to talk between the employee and employer. And it gives us to express the things. But does the buyer do the same thing? No, they don't.
That's a really good point.
They don't sit with us. They don't talk with us. If my buyer just take the phone and then say 10 minutes, hey, Mustafiz, this happened. We are also human beings. We understand shops are closed in Europe and America. They cannot buy it. If they cannot sell, how they can buy? They are lucky that they got the 80% salary of their shops peoples from their government. We are not. We unfortunately we don't have the social security and all these kinds of things. But you see, they could have just take a phone and then they have a discuss. Till now, the pandemic, I can say in 1 year already happened. I've been working with around 35 customers and now already 50% gone, not say 60% gone because of these kind of things, and 40 also few I already left because I want to work with a strategic point of view and a partnership point of view. Now you see, we need to have a close discussion, a collective discussions, and understand. Somebody should come and ask me, hey, factory, what do you need? How can we help you? We want you to grow. What could be the strategy? What is you need from us? Say, for example, for us as a manufacturer, the first and foremost important thing what we need, a continuous sourcing patterns. It is not happening. Buyers are today to China, tomorrow to Cambodia, day after tomorrow to India, then Pakistan. So what happened? You prepare for something and next month you don't know. Then second things, in between the country, sourcing strategies like this, where they are finding 5 cents less, they just jump on the orders over there. I used to work for Primark, 7 years I worked for them. In 2014, what they did, for a simple few reason, they find some manufacturer who is offering them better price, they left. And 2 years I had to almost cry because I built my entire business with them. So a supply chain sourcing stability is important to reset, and then have a discussion, close discussion. This happened, going forward, do this, and then a transparent roadmap. Okay, this is where I am. I'm selling 20% in online. I'm selling this. This is where I'm sourcing. I will not able to sell more. I will have a trouble. I will have like this. How can we support you? Actually, when they have a discussion like this, we also can support to the clients and retailer. We also can support to the buyers. It's only not only like that. It will help us. It will also help them, and ultimately, the bigger community will be benefited. The workers will be benefited. The peoples in Western world will be benefited. Debenham shut down their shops. 12,000 people jobless. Arcadia Group, you see how many people jobless. Why they shut down? Why they got bankruptcy? Because of this kind of attitude. Never treat their manufacturing partner as their real partner. Never created like that. Never have a strategic relationship. Have a close discussion. So going forward, for me, this will be the only way to have a discussion, understand, and prepare a roadmap.
So reestablishing human, basically human relationships, reestablishing a relationship is the way forward. Anand, final comment to you. Is that would you reflect on that?
Sure. Yeah, definitely. Thank you. I guess I can kind of share a similar perspective to Mustafiz, but maybe, I'll explain it in a slightly different way. So recently, one of the, big investments that Shahi has made has been in solar energy. So we've been able to set up a solar power plant, and through that, 70% of our renewable electricity comes from, or 70% of our, electricity comes from renewable sources. So we're really proud of this achievement. It took a lot of effort, a lot of coordination. But when we talk to our customers, essentially the way we, think of this achievement is we say, hey, look, we all know that you all have very ambitious sustainability goals. Some of you want to be sourcing 100% renewable energy by 2030 or even by 2025. It's really in the near future. Most of your footprint in terms of this is within your supply chain. It's not your stores, it's not your offices. So when we make an effort to achieve something like this, of course we do it because it's the right thing to do. It's good for our business, it's good for our country, all of that. But also we're doing it because we're seeing ourselves as an extension of you. So if H&M says we're going to achieve this goal by 2025, Shahi as a supplier is an extension of that. In order for H&M to achieve that goal, all of their suppliers have to achieve a lot. So if we have the ability to think like that and say, look, we're gonna develop our strategy towards sustainability based on the targets you've set and help you achieve these goals, because we understand we're an extension of you. If we can think like that, I think their perspective on all issues from price to, placing orders to consistent orders, like Mustafiz was saying, all these things need to match that same line of thinking where basically, we all know that if you trace the history of this industry, it started as brands, used to do their own manufacturing, that got outsourced. Now we're starting to say, like, of course we're different companies, but we're understanding that we all have to rely on each other in order for this industry to kind of, to work. So I think that perspective needs to be shared by not just sustainability teams, not just CEOs, but all, it needs to be a common theme across all the different departments and companies.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm conscious of time. We have come to the end of the discussion. My thanks to Mustafiz and to Anand for your contributions, for your passion, and for clearly demonstrating your concerns and your frustrations with the way things are. I should say that we've heard a number of brands mentioned. They're not here to put their side, but clearly there have been significant challenges in the sector. But my thanks to you both for your comments and your insight today. Thank you also for putting your questions to our panel thank everybody. We're coming back in 8 minutes. The next speed networking session starts, so do join that if you can. And then at 1 o'clock UK time, we're back with our next session of discussion groups like this, looking at evolving legislation and mandatory due diligence, best practice in removing fashion's forest footprint, and chemical recycling as a solution for disposal, which I'll be in. So hope to see you in one of those. But for now, thanks very much indeed for your time.
Thank you all. Thanks so much.